Who wants to watch me do something stupid? Welcome back to CSM TV. We're back and we're working on the Galant today. So we got some vacuum lines to take care of. Need to mount our map sensor. I think it's going to go back here somewhere. Not real sure. Wire up our fuel pressure sensor that we installed on the last episode. If you haven't watched that, get caught up. Watch the last couple, actually. We'll see where we're at on this build, upgrades, whatever you want to call it. So got an intake we need to hook up as well. So we're going to pull the ECU. Need to double check it, make sure everything's good with it, and then I think I'm going to just install the chip because I believe it's been socketed. I'm not sure. So I need to double check that. So we'll get the old one pulled out of this. It's right here in this area under the radio basically. So derp, ECU's over here. We'll get that pulled out, get the ECU checked out, and then maybe we can just swap the chips over to the DSM chip, and we'll get it out, and then I'll show you, see what it looks like. Just gonna swap cases since the DSM case has different mounting points in the GVR4. So just swap internals over and be able to pop it right in. Okay, inside swapped, just these 4 screws to swap them out. Good to go. So it's ready to go back in, and then we'll get into some wiring, what we got to do on the car. So started pulling apart and trying to figure things out, but I'll kind of go over that here in a second. Alright, got our fuel pressure sensor wires hooked up. It's kind of hard to see, but got it through the factory grommet hole, through the engine harness, and routed right here on the inside. So we're going to hook this up. We're going to actually use a 3-pin Deutsch connector at the end of these wires, and then our other wires are going to come off of our ECU where we need them. So we'll be able to disconnect that if we don't need it, or if we want to swap to a different sensor or anything like that. So wire that up, and then we have our wire for our wideband. That's going to be a narrowband simulation, so we can run fuel pressure sensor to free up a spot on ECMlink. I keep saying DSMlink. So we'll need to connect that in our wiring here. The first thing we got to do is get all this AFC wiring disconnected. So I'm going to go through that and figure that out real quick. Alright, so get our AFC all disconnected. Before we go any further though, I want to get some heat shrink on these. Before they just had electrical tape, but I'd rather get some heat shrink on these, so we'll have to depin some of these guys. Not too bad to depin. Let's see. First thing that has to come out is this little black lock guy. And then I like to get a finger back here on the pin. And then there's a little tab holding it on. Just want to gently pry on. Comes right out. So now we'll be able to get our heat shrink on, get it on there, and do these one at a time. Don't go depinning a bunch and then do that. So we'll go ahead and get these shrinked up, and then we can move on to actually wiring the car. Okay, so we got our fuel pressure sensor wired up. Well, the one end, the other end going to the ECM. Still got to do. So, but before we do that, we got our O2 sensor wiring. Went ahead and depinned it. It's going to make it a lot easier to do what we need to do. So, since we're running open loop, we're not going to be running the factory O2. So we can just cut this guy. And I have a wire coming from my wideband. We just need to put a connector on here. I say connector, we're going to use a splice. So these are the splices we're going to use. If you've seen any of my videos, this is normally what I use. These little guys. It's kind of hard to see. Little brass splices. Part number from TE. Right here. Here's a splice. We've got these crimpers we're going to use. Don't remember the part number. I'll throw it in the description if anybody's interested. So for now, I'd like to put a connector on this actually, so it's removable, but I don't actually have a 2-pin like I'd like to use, so we're going to hardwire it with some extra, and we'll have some extra just in case we want to redo it. Like I'd like to redo this one, so I'll put a probably connector here for both of these. Maybe. Probably won't happen. Alrighty, there's our splice. Give a nice tug on it. Put some heat shrink on it. Put it back into where we put it. And if you're, I plan on depinning all of these. Do them one at a time so you don't get lost for sure. We'll go ahead and shrink this up and we can put it back in its spot. Alright, got our heat shrink on. Pin it back. Oh, back into the ECU. Maybe. Just like that. And this is pin 4 on this large connector. The ECMlink does have pinouts of these, and you can look them up. They have all the descriptions, so make sure you're using the O2 sensor if you're using the wideband simulation. So there's that. Got to put our lock in like we did before, and we can move on to the fuel pressure wires. Okay, this next one's going to be a little different. We got to retain this wire. This is the sensor's ground wire, so we need to just tap into this, so we're not going to cut it. At least we're going to attempt to cut it. We'll see what happens. Get our strippers in there. I'm going to try to strip back a little bit. Just kind of like that. A little more might be better. I can get it to work with us. Right, so we want enough to get our crimp in here. We got just enough. That should work. And then set our other wire right in there. It's probably not going to stay where I want it. We'll see. We'll have to just do that here in a second. We got a solid crimp, didn't have to cut the wire. Like I said, another piece of heat shrink. So this is number 25 slot with the sensor ground. The next one we'll be doing is the 5-volt reference as the next one over. And then we'll need the EGR for that. So we'll just keep on working here and yeah, try to get this knocked out. Don't forget the heat shrink. Alright, so the last one we're going to do is the EGR. So, looks like on the Galant, I'm not sure if this is a Galant thing or what it is, just difference in what I see. Looks like we got a green and red, that'd be position 15. So, should be the one. Let's hope so, otherwise we're going to have some issues. This one we'll be able to cut. I just got to, I like to leave some length on this, as much as I can. So we don't need to tie in, we actually need to just trim it back. Okay, wires are bundled up nicely. Once again, I used some scrap wire just to connect all this stuff. I use the ground. I use black for the sensor ground, red for the 5-volt reference, and white for our signal. So I just kind of go off those wires. That's what I'm used to using. But anyways, we just need to throw some of our Deutsch pins on here. So basically we just need to get these pins, same as our mating connector here. So white, red, black. And you can look at the pin out, but sometimes it's just easier just to do it this way. You can visually see what you're doing. Alright, with those all connected, just got to plug in that. And that'll do it for our wiring for now. We'll just tuck this stuff up. I got to put the ECU back in, and we should be good to go. Yeah, I lied. Last thing we're going to do, I actually found another 3-pin Deutsch connector I'm going to put in. Got this clutch cut wire. It's already, I'm assuming it's clutch cut because that's the pin it's going to. I didn't wire this in, the previous owner did, so we're going to go ahead and clean this stuff up. Go ahead and get a connector in there. So let's get to it. Alrighty, now we can move on to stuff on the engine. Okay, so before we move on, I'm actually just gonna probably end the video here. I started editing this video with the Galant, and it started getting kind of long, so I decided to split it up into 2 sections. So, and I'm still working on the end part, and I just want to get something out, just because it's been a little while. So, go ahead and end it with the wiring part of installing ECMlink on our Galant, and we'll pick it up in the next video. Hopefully it'll be actually pretty soon. Might be another video before that. We'll see what pops off. So have something cool. So yeah, we'll end it there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.